record to the cloud button. We are officially recording. It is April 19th, 2022. Excited for the Angie Macdougall Masterclass. We've got lots of people rolling on into the room. And again, we thank you for joining us during an exceptionally busy time of year. Last year, I believe we were trying to finish and just be done with Masterclass by this time because many of you are either office searching or already moving into your offices and running your first interviews, etc. So we're looking forward to hosting you and having just a tight masterclass. You're probably finish in about 75 minutes. I won't leave right away, but we do want to free you up to do the things that you got to do. And I imagine we'll have a number of people joining us as it continues to roll. So Angie Macdougall celebrates 28 years with Vector this month. In fact, we may have rolled the actual date of the 28-year anniversary. I was a pilot manager in Joe Cardillo's Calgary office in Western Canada. And I was brand new to that role. And Angie was essentially kind of a PR. We're going to catch you as a PR, I think. And it got off to an amazing start. I want to say 10,000 in the fast start, but I think that's because my memory is muddy. Yeah.
7,200.
It felt like 7,200. Here's the point. First weekend was like a 0, though. So it could have been 10. But just amazing to see this young woman win her first trophy and just start to become a sales professional that year. While continuing school at University of Calgary. And then we were in TLA together that fall. I went out to Montreal and Angie eventually took over the Calgary office where she was very much a peer of mine, kind of like my go-to buddy as we were running divisions together. And she always just continued to just beat me so badly, especially the development arena. Crushed me with development. Which I'm just celebrating today, even because she's continued to be known for that over the years. One of the best pure leaders I've known in the business, regardless of gender, male or female or any other. I'm saying Angie's always done the business right. She has high integrity. She's been for over, I believe, 20 months now, spearheading women. We've renamed it the Women's Leadership Network. And I love this. Originally, we were calling it a mastermind and it rose by any other name. Names matter. And I love how they've come up with this and this collaborated to get this great new title out. So she's been talking to women in leadership in Vector specifically for the last 2 years. And we just thought it would make a ton of sense to bring some of the things that she's found and some of the things that our community has emerged to be able to help the rest of us who are not invited on those calls. I don't get to go to those calls, but we wanted to be able to have kind of a version of one of those calls here to be able to bring some of the learnings to the rest of the Vector group here. So without further ado, Angie Macdougall, let's give her a round of applause. Let's get her set up right here. I know you're super muted, so I'll give the slow clap for another child of the 90s. Angie Macdougall, when you started, right. I believe Friends had been on the air for a year. And it's so old, it's new. People are watching it again. Angie, I'm going to spotlight, I guess, whoever's speaking here, because it might be you, it might be me, but just excited to dive in with you today. What would you say are some of your high hopes for our session today? What would you say would be some of your desired outcomes?
All right. Well, first, I just want to say thanks to you and, everybody that's going to have an opportunity to listen, really, for allowing me the space to share some of my thoughts. As the title of the class is called Unlocking the Development Code, really the objective is to create a conversation, offer some insight and awareness to how you can all develop stronger, bigger, and more successful teams. At the end of the day, that's really what I want to come across at the end of this call, is that you walk away with maybe some new ways of seeing things and thinking about things that will help you not just attract, but develop and retain bigger and stronger teams as you build your organization. And so when Trent talked a bit about what I want to share with you, is a lot of what I want to share today stems from my own personal experience as a woman in this business for almost 28 years now. And more recently, in the last almost 2 years, of having the opportunity to co-host and facilitate the now, what we call it, the Women's Leadership Network for management and people on the management path in Vector. What we're learning, what has come up, what we're learning, and what we feel is going to be valuable for us all to be exposed to and to learn. And so the Women's Leadership Network is about empowering the voice and impact of our female leadership team, a community that values growth, inclusivity, and collaboration. And the more that I've had an opportunity to host and work with these calls, it kind of goes back to a little bit of why I even wanted to get involved and maybe why I didn't want to get involved. And I know this might sound a bit confusing, but I think I have to give you a bit of background on how this came about and why I was actually hesitant to do this. Shelby Wildguest, when I first met her, one of the first conversations we kept having was, oh, we've got really excited about to form something in our business to help more women develop. And my experience has been anything but feeling limited because of my gender, personally, my experience in vector. And so I'm bringing that up because, the term feminism for me personally, and everything I'm going to share with you today is my own experience here, but it had different connotation to me. Other than the fact that it's about creating equal opportunity, I felt a little bit more, it created this narrative of victimizing and limitations with women. And, it just didn't feel good with me. And because my experience was anything but that, I came up with feeling that I had just an opportunity to succeed as anybody else did. I didn't feel like, this was a place that did I need to get involved in and did it really matter? And, I don't know, do we need that, right? And so that combined with the last couple of years, for me to be exposed to different ways of thinking through books that I've been reading, people that I've been talking to, leadership that I've worked with and has helped to impact me, I've really seen that it matters. It matters. And so I'm going to share with you kind of two different definitions and topics, and then I'm going to get into some stats to tell you why we really needed to move this forward. So when we think about building these stronger teams, a good question to ask yourself, right, that we were asking is, how diverse is your team? It's easier to recruit people just like you, but stronger teams, bigger teams, more successful teams, right? They're the ones who are intentional about recruiting with a diversity of thought, background, and experience. And so the challenge that we all have, right, in business is and an opportunity, right? We have an opportunity to recruit a lot of people and develop a lot of people and build the teams as we see we want to build them. And so a good thing to ask ourselves is, how am I at developing people that aren't like me? How diverse is the staff that I have and in the organization that I work with? And then when we think about the term inclusion, right? Inclusion is an active, intentional, and continuous process that addresses inequities in power and privilege to build a respectful community that ensures all diverse people and groups feel valued, respected, and welcome. And I have, Sherry Dickey to thank a lot for this as the National Recruiting Manager in Canada. He has started a task force in our organization called Equity, Diversity, Inclusivity, and has helped, challenge some of my thinking. And all the people that I work with really have been gracious to help me see things a little different. It's hard to leverage the power of diversity if people don't feel included, right? So some of the questions I've been asking myself is, what can we do to be more inclusive and not just give more people a shot, but how do we become more inclusive to give them a shot all the way through? And what I'm learning is that representation matters in our business. So if reps don't see themselves represented in the organization that they're joining, it's harder for them to do well. And it's been said, and I didn't believe this, but I heard it, but it's been said and it's proven through research, it's really hard to be what you don't see. It's just harder. So I'm going to share some experience in my own to show you that, can you still find a way to succeed if you don't see it? Yes, but it's harder if you can't see what you want to be, right? And so when I think about that specifically, right, that is important because the more diverse we have of our team, and this goes, by the way, as I'll get into beyond gender, but I'm going to start with gender because this is a place that I can speak to as being a woman, and we're going to start with gender. But this really is about, right, all types of inclusivity, from Black, Indigenous, people of color, LGBTQ, right? This goes bigger. So it's good for us to be thinking about and rethinking what are some of our own even biases because of who we are and how we've grown up, right? And so I feel personally, when we're speaking just men and women, I've been pretty lucky, right? And I say lucky because I've had a lot of supportive men throughout my life, right? And through my career, you know, working closely as Trent as a leader for me when I was coming up in the business, working it with Joe Cardillo. I even think, you know, Dave Durand was a region manager at the time when I was coming up that way. But I think about even as a kid, you know, my dad, I had summer jobs driving a Bobcat, doing landscaping. You know, my mom worked, my parents worked, and it was never even a thought to me that that was going to be a limitation or a feature, right, of gender. And so that's how I felt in this business. I never felt limited by that. But I'm going to pose something to you, two things, and this is where we kind of get to this, is that a fear that I had coming up in this business, you know, as a DM succeeding and then as a DVM, you know, a fear I had wasn't, can I do well as a woman? It was, can I be a mom and still run a business here? Can I do both? Now, that in itself is a question that I don't think a lot of men probably, and maybe they do, but probably not a lot of men ask themselves, just because it's not maybe societally presented that way, or they don't think about it. But it's a fear that I had, is I didn't know if I could do both. And so I'm really thankful for the people around me that didn't have the answers, but they were willing to work with me to find some solutions and how we could maybe see if this could work, right? And so, because I didn't have those role models. And when I kept saying to myself over and over, oh, this isn't an issue in Vector, right? This isn't a thing, not in our company, that's in other companies. That's not here. I just had to look at the facts. And the facts are, right, you know, since Vector started in the early 80s, out of all the people that have promoted to a division manager and beyond level, right, we have promoted 7 females into a DVM position in the history of the company. And of those 7, one of them has been promoted to an executive position, which is myself. And of the 6, right, 4 are still DVMs today. One of the DVMs it's not, she was the first person to promote it to a DVM, and that was Lori Zager. And I was so excited to meet her at one of the SLCs I attended, and I got there and I was her roommate, and I found out she just quit to have kids. I was like, oh, that's special. And then a good friend of mine, Nadine McGowan, is you know, great DVM in our company and personal choice. She moved on to raise a family. But the 4 other women we have, Kathy and Kate and Shayla and Paige, right? And currently that's 4 of 47 DVMs. So are female. So statistics are there, right? So we can feel a lot of things. But my goal then became, as Shelby, you know, said, hey, let's do this. It became a bit bigger than just myself. And what I'm learning is that we all have different types of privilege, right? There's a lot of different types of privilege. And I felt, well, man, business is just good for business. If we can have more diversity, if we can have different people thinking different way, if we can bring that to our leadership team, it's good for business. This isn't a zero-sum game. This isn't, if we have more women, it'll be less opportunity for men. That's not what this is about. This is about creating a more inclusive and diverse opportunity so that you have more people on your staff, so that when new people come into this organization, they see themselves. And we can really create something that is going to be bigger than we've ever seen it before. So, you know, that's, you know, really where I come from, is it's, I didn't feel like we needed it. I looked at the stats. Stats don't lie. They are what they are. And about creating a more diverse, inclusive environment, even more, I would say, because when I share with you some of the feedback we've had from all these calls that we're running, man, the people that are here, as you guys know, want to be here. They love being here. They're here for a reason. Somebody believed in them, no matter, believed that they could be everything they wanted to be in this business. It's now, and I truly believe this is the best business to raise a family in. I truly believe that. And I guess I could say now, it's even more important to me that we create and continue to create a safe place for all people. As my daughter is going to be 17 this fall, and I hope gets a sample kit. I guess I wouldn't say sample kit anymore, gets a demo and starts selling. She doesn't get a sample kit anymore, just starts selling some knives. But I think about her, being a part of our company and going to trips and events, and I want her to feel just as great as I've always felt about our opportunity here. So, yeah.
Angie, I appreciate your intro here, and there's many thoughts. And friends, if you've got thoughts or things that you're looking to clarify or nuggets in the chat, that's a great spot for that. I'm going to add spotlight so everybody can see us. So Angie, I hear you saying that, listen, I always felt really supported here. I didn't feel ever that my opportunity was limited because of my gender. And really, in many ways, things are pretty good. So then I guess the question comes up, like, so why start the work, especially one that could, I don't know, you're busy, you're running a region, right? Since 2016, you got a lot of work to do. It's not like you've just got all this discretionary time to lead a 90-minute course for people you make no money on. This is not overrides, obviously. It's not like you're going to get a 1% of every woman selling in Vector, right? So we should have negotiated that on the front end. That'd have been fun. I'm just suggesting here. So if it's not broken, why break it? Why start having conversations just to see what we could do?
Yeah. Well, I think for me, what really intrigued me is that I wanted to, I was just thinking about the future of our business. I was thinking about, this isn't really about me. Because when I look at our region, in Canada, it's grown quite substantially with representation on both sides. And right now I have to think about how to be completely inclusive too of men. We have more women in many times when we look on our agendas than we do men. And when, as Trent says, like, why would you bother doing this? Because we need diversity to grow our company. And I really believe that. And I don't believe anymore that it's up to and if we're just talking men, women, because that's what I'm talking about right now, it's no longer the woman's responsibility to create the change. And the more that I see that, and I'm saying this to you because over the last 18 months, we get feedback from every call we have. And the feedback is phenomenal. And I'll share with you some of the feedback that we've gotten. But what's happening over the last 6 months or so, 6 to 8 to 9 months, the feedback has continued to show up with, I'll give you an example. Here's a feedback that somebody shared. I feel like many men don't really know how to work and interact with women from a leadership level. It makes it difficult for women to perform at their best when they don't feel understood. It's not that men in the business are doing a bad job. They just are genuinely ignorant to our thinking and feeling processes because our views differ. And I honestly believe our business could support women better by offering more resources to the men who lead us about how to lead women better. This person says, I think feeling more seen and understood would lead to a lot more female development and leadership. We say we want to treat everyone equally by treating them differently, and that applies to women as well. And so if our goal is to grow, like if someone said to you, hey, this is how you're going to recruit and retain and develop more people. So do you want more people in TLA this fall? Do you want more managers in developing next summer? Is that what you want? Okay, if I had the thing for you that you could do exactly what you're doing, but just change some stuff on how you talk, present, culture, right? If you were aware of a different way of providing a space for people to grow, you would get more recruits and have a bigger team. I think everybody would say, count me in, I'm in for that, right? So for me, it was like, this isn't a one-sided thing. And I know this might sound a little odd for me to bring this up, but it just seems so timely from especially the age of my daughter. Consent isn't a one-sided deal, right? Consent, yes, I need to know what does consent mean, but so does the other person that I'm with has to know what consent means. This isn't just And this goes both ways, by the way. This is a men and women thing. This isn't, I'm not speaking on one side only, but the more that we learn about this, if we're not educating everybody on how to be more inclusive, right? And to think about people that don't think like they do, we're never going to create a space to build bigger teams. We're always going to be siloed in only surrounding ourselves with people who think just like us. And although that's fun in the short term, I think we'd all agree, oh, I feel really good when everybody agrees with me. I mean, I'll tell you, I feel really good when everybody agrees with me. That's awesome. I also have enough wisdom to know that's probably not a sign of growth for me. If I'm not being challenged a little bit, and if I look around and everybody looks and acts and talks like me, I'm missing a whole bunch of people that could be a part of this great team. And if we can create a more diverse environment, and if that's going to start right now with how do we educate everybody, right? Not just women, but men and women, then we are going to grow as an organization. And we need to use our ability to do that. So, I think that the feedback just kept coming in. We need more men to be in the conversation, because it's, if the reality is right now, 4 of 47 DVMs are women, you can't be expected to think like somebody you're not. You're just not, unless you do a deep dive and we start checking biases and we start asking questions and we start learning. And the most recent trip that we had in Maui was wonderful. So many women were like, I'm so glad we have this. And I had so many men coming up to me saying, hey, what can I do to create a more supportive and safe environment for everybody to feel that they're welcome here? And that's why we wanted to have this call, is because there are some things that we can do that we might not be thinking about because we haven't asked the question and we haven't thought we've had to.
I love this. I mean, and I did drop this in the chat, but I want to make sure we just put an underscore with this. Diversity is just good for business. Like if we have the same amount of people come through our offices, but we could actually have more development, more assistance, more branches, more districts by just tweaking a couple of things, it just makes good leadership sense, Ange, and just celebrating that excellent work. What if we got right into some of that meat? Like how could we just tweak a couple things even? Like what do I need to know as a guy? For example, even with the Women's Leadership Network. So let's say I've got TLA and I don't even know who could go to this.
Okay. Yeah. So as we start there, so really the focus of this is to increase the number of female district managers in order to impact the representation of women at the DVM level. That is really the objective of this. So this is a focus on a management path. So who can come to these events that we run is any woman that is in TLA, right? In the non-summer, most likely you have them in TLA, or they're an assistant manager. They're on a path of management. They're considering management and they're on a path of management. So they're either in that path or they're current district managers, current branch managers, and DVMs. When we first started this, we actually just started with current district managers and DVMs. And what we found through doing this is we have to start sooner, because if you happen to be in a division or a district or a region, is what it is. But if you happen to be in that one and there isn't any or very few women in this level of district management thriving, loving life, okay, then we're missing all these people that are coming up. See this as short term. And unconsciously, whether we say it or not, they start to ask questions. So what does that mean? Does that mean that this isn't a business that works for a woman as a career? Oh, this is just a sales rep thing. They can't really do this long term, right? That's what they start to think. So you don't have to say it, but by not having women in leadership positions that are thriving, why not? And so I think that that's important to know, that if we can start this earlier, and that's the feedback that we're getting from when we have assistant managers on these calls, they say, it was so great to connect and see all the other successful women thriving in our company. So what was the gift of COVID? I'm telling you, this was the biggest gift that we could have ever been given, Because up to then, the only way we could ever get all these women in a room was one time a year at SLC. And every time that I spoke at SLC or I was there, I kid you not, I would get tons of women come up to me and go, oh my gosh, I never even knew you existed. I never even knew this is so great. And then we'd wait a year and the same thing would happen. So now we have the opportunity to leverage, right, the power of Zoom, and you can invite people, right, onto this call that are assistant managers and above that are women to come onto these calls so that they can see other people. I mean, our last call was Paige and Shayla sharing, very vulnerable, right? They've had moments of doubt, challenges. It's not easy, you know, realness. And then we give them all the time to connect and get to know people, because at the end of the day, I think we'd all agree, we develop people through relationships, and relationships take time. And the only way we can do that is we get to know people. So we create a space for people to get to know other people, so they have other colleagues and they can see, you know, and get exposed to all the great people in our company. So a couple of things, you know, here's one: keep communication professional. So if I'm going to give you some tips, these tips that I want to give you are from a variety of sources. Okay. And I'm going to share them after. Dan Cassetta had a lady named Heather on the podcast, on the Changing Lives Lighthouse podcast. She has a great book. And I've gotten a lot of things I'm going to share with you from it, and I'll post the resource for that. It's come from that. It's come from Shelby sharing things she's learning. It's come from my own experience. It's from other research I'm doing. But first one is to keep communication professional. And I know some of the things I'm going to share with you, you're all going to say to me, oh yeah. Like, I get that. And that's cool. So this is just a reminder, okay? Never, ever send sexually explicit picture to a coworker. Never, ever. No matter, never, ever, okay? Images can haunt you forever. And what I want to share with you, this goes both ways, okay? This is men and women. Now, we're all familiar with the Me Too movement. And so I just want to take this as an opportunity to state something, is that many times when change is created, things have to go, the pendulum was over here, and some people have said, oh, the Me Too movement, it went too far. Sure, it went all the way over here. It had to, though, in order to come back here. It actually had to go that far, which might have been too far with certain things, but it had to in order to come here, because this wasn't good. So why I'm sharing that with you is because I think it had created a fearful place for men, because they're like, I don't know what I can do, so I'm not going to do anything. And we know that's not good for business, because then you're excluding people from having an opportunity to grow in the business, right? So that doesn't work either. So what I want to share with you is I want to share some things that we can all do, right? This is both genders, but might you have to be more mindful as a man of some of these things? Yeah, but that's why we're having the call, is so that you can create a space that's safe for everybody, right? So we want to make sure that you're always thinking about and asking the question, what impact are these words going to have on a colleague, someone on my team, right? What's going to happen there? So, you know, just thinking about keeping communication professional. The second tip is respect personal space. So we're all going to get an opportunity, I think, right, to create more in-person events as the summer unfolds. You know, the last couple of years, it's been a little harder to do that. But some of you in the business have never been in the Vector business as a manager with a lot of in-person activity, weekly team nights and workshops and bringing people together, which is so exciting. And as we do that, right, we want to be mindful of a few things, right? So things like, you know, hugging, cheek kissing, handshaking, they all involve entering somebody's personal space. Okay, all of those do. So keeping it light, right? Like a quick pat on the back or a tap on the arm, you know, can make sense. However, the bottom line is it's if you're not sure whether it's okay to hug, just don't. A handshake is typically always accepted. You know, a handshake is a good thing to use at a minimum, is to greet people with a firm handshake. But we want to be mindful of personal space. And I think that's important for both sides. This isn't, like I said, just a man to woman, but this is important for all of us, right? Something that I think we all can relate with is it's so great to get to know people over food, right? We've always had something in our, where, hey, I'll take you for lunch, I'll take you for dinner, I'll take you for coffee, right? And so something that's come up lately is people are wondering, well, can I still do that? Like, how do I take, if I'm a male manager, can I take a female manager for lunch, right? The first thing my go-to would be is to do it in groups, right? The easy thing is just do it in groups. To avoid feeling uncomfortable at a one-on-one business, meal, is just invite them as a group. There's a lot of wins to that, by the way, right? When we get people together as a group, it's not all on you, right, to create the conversation and to develop, but we all develop each other. They learn from other people. So it's just nice to be able to do that, as you can impact more people at one time. So do it in groups, right? If it only makes sense, you're like, well, I really want to have this conversation one-on-one and take someone for coffee. If you really are doing it where you're like, and you're thinking about being professional, and you're polite and you're considerate, sit across the table from somebody. Don't sit side to side, right? Don't go sit in a booth and sit side by side somebody, and even at a right angle, right? You want to sit across the table. Lunch is, I think, safer than dinner. Coffee's safer than, if that's what you're looking to create and you need that one-on-one. So you can still do it, but think about how could I leverage my time even more effectively sometimes with groups. This lens a little bit, I'm going to get into this, is that by accident, what we've done sometimes have excluded people. So we might be thinking there's certain activities that only men like to do and not women. So, if somebody invites somebody out to say golfing for 4 or 5 hours and they only invite the guys and they don't invite women because they think they wouldn't like to do it, we won't know unless you ask, right? So I think we ask everybody to do these things. But if you find that someone is like, yeah, I'm not really into golf, well, then you're going to need to find another activity to do with them. You don't just not do it. Like, I think that's really important, is that if we're going to be inclusive, then we have to get to know people, and we need to get open to what would be fun for them to do and where can I create an opportunity. And maybe it's not 9 holes of golf, maybe it's mini golf. That's something that pretty much everybody can play for fun, and you could do that one-on-one and go play mini golf or go to a driving range. Maybe it's not that whole 4 hours, but we really do need to think about, if I'm going to ask men to do this, then I'm going to ask women to do this, right? And if I'm not going to ask women, then I'm not going to ask men. So we should just make sure that we're asking that question of ourselves, right? Is if you wouldn't ask a woman, then why would you ask a man? So I think it's important to be thinking about, what are they interested in, right? I think that's important. When you're giving compliments, give neutral compliments. So what's a neutral compliment? Well, we don't want to compliment so much in business on someone's personal appearance, because it can be construed in many different ways. Perception's always typically, it's in the person who receives it. It's the most important, right? It's not really the intention. So when we give our compliments, we could say, oh, you're very creative, or, that's a nice color. If you take the word I out of when you compliment somebody, it's like, I think you look good in that. That suit is great. I mean, that's not so much about like, because you can take things differently if we use the word I, especially if it's a guy saying it to a girl. Oh, I think you look really good in that. Like, it leaves too much open. So if you take the I out, right, and you make a comment, but if you're making comments, let's try to make those based on characteristics, right? So, I think a lot this when you're as some of you are and have and will be maybe raising kids, they talk a lot about, instead of telling your kids they're smart, right? I love how you studied so hard for that, right? So how do we create compliments that are, they're things that they are doing, right? That's helping them grow in our business and setting them up that way. Another tip is to, and this came up a lot around the Me Too movement, keeping your door open during office meetings. So if you're bringing a female in to meet with you, right, is keeping the door partly open. I think that's said to be, makes people feel safe. As people advance and they continue in the business, could there be a space where it's just you maybe in an assistant manager? There could be, And again, as long as you're being professional, considerate, it's just the thought. So it's not like don't do it, but you can still have a productive meeting having the door open partway. Another way is if you have an office that has glass walls, that's very similar to, right? It's everything is in the open, right? But you have a bit of a sound barrier there too, is helpful. There's a great acronym that I think I could share with you for thinking before you speak. It's just the word think. Is it thoughtful, honest, intelligent, necessary, or kind? And if it's not, we just don't say it. You know, it's a really simple acronym. And as we grow in this business, right, we develop friendships and we become very close with people that have built the business with, right? We spend a lot of time together. And so it can be easy sometimes to cross the professional boundary, right? But if we use that acronym of think, is it thoughtful? Is it honest, intelligent, necessary, or kind, right? One of the biggest ways to run, this is right from the book, run afoul of today's secret workplace rule is to engage in locker room talk with a male colleague. And not even, and this is with a male colleague, this isn't even about around women, because some men don't feel comfortable with it. And then we start creating this atmosphere of what we call toxic masculinity. And that's not fun. That's what we don't want to create either, right? So if we keep locker room type talk just out of the professional space, we don't risk that, right? I'm going to hit on a topic now that is kind of a loaded landmine, I feel, but dress for success. And I say this is loaded because it's almost like, you know, what's the right way? And I'm going to share some advice that was given to me personally, and then I'll share some of the thoughts that I've read is if you want something from somebody else, okay, so either I'm selling something, I'm looking to promote you, I want something, then I need to be thinking about how I'm dressed. I do. So how can I create an impression? Because we all know first impressions happen very quickly, right? So how can I present myself to be respected for what I'm doing in this business and who I am and what I have to offer, right? So we need to be thinking about that. So acting and dressing like a professional sends a message to people that you take this seriously. So if you want something from somebody else, you need to be mindful, right? If you don't, like somebody shared with me, hey, you're out with your friends and you don't care, and there's no reason you should care. You're like, I wear whatever I want. Yeah. But if you want something, since those impressions get made so fast, right? Let's not let that be the reason that it takes away from anything great that we can teach and offer and connect with people on. Is that it's important to be thinking about our attire. And that goes for, let's just think about that in general, right? You're running an interview, you're running training, whatever you're doing. When we dress up, we feel good. We ourselves in a different fashion. So it's got this other benefit to it, right? So it doesn't mean that when you're at a team night, let's say, and one of your team activities is playing soccer. I remember the first time I played soccer as a team activity. My reps were like, oh my gosh, you're not dressed up. It was like, wow, it made me a bit more relatable. But it wasn't because I did it every day, right? Like we do need to be thinking about how we dress. And even though, this goes to how we portray ourselves on social media. If we're moving forward and part of our business is going to be using social media and a platform to leverage an extension of who we are and who Vector is, yeah, we need to think about that. Yeah. We have to ask ourselves, what's the objective? Yes, we want to be authentic, and yes, we need to be ourselves, but to think about that. People are, what should they be doing? They should be going to check you out on LinkedIn. That's what they should be doing, right? Before they go for an interview, they do that. Well, they're going to find you in lots of places, right? And so we need to be thinking about that. Another tip is to, as I mentioned this earlier, a consistent handshake, right? I think that's really important. I know that was such an important thing we taught reps when they did demos at home, but now it's as you're bringing staff into your office and as you're doing team nights in person again, and we're doing this, is that teaching people how to give a good, firm handshake is important. Okay, I know I have a lot of tips here, but this is the next one. And I think this is really important. Listen actively. Okay, listen actively. So being a good listener is critical to workplace communication. All right, and this is right out of the book. I'm going to quote this. What's the most commonly used phrase by women? You're not listening. Now, that's right out of the book, whether you think that's you or not, or your experience or not. If our goal is to communicate with people effectively and build a relationship, it's really important to show that we're listening. And I'm going to share something that even makes me go, is that all women? It's all people, first of all. Okay, so let's just, when I say women, men, yes, there's always exceptions and nuances. So I'm just giving you broader sense. But many times, and if a man, you're like, as a male manager and you're wondering, what is a tip I can use? Sometimes, most of the time, a woman's not looking for you to fix something. They just want you to listen. So when a woman speaks, she's talking because she wants to be heard. She doesn't necessarily want you to agree or to give advice. Sometimes it's just being heard. And I'm saying that in men, women, because that's what research is sharing, but this could go just for people in general, is we just want to be heard, right? So what's a good tip on active listening? Paraphrasing and reflecting back on what's said without judgment or advice is helpful. It shows somebody we're listening. So from my own experience, what's our biggest challenge when it comes to listening to somebody else is the other distractions that are around us. Your phone. We can just decide that if we're doing a conversation via Zoom with somebody, we just turn the phone off. And even before COVID, I remember going to a manager's office and having a conversation, and we're sitting there and they basically had their phone out and they just kept looking at their phone the whole time. They just kept looking at their phone. And I was like, if you're doing that to me, I can only imagine what's happening when a rep comes in here. So we have to, I work on constantly, how can I be a better listener? Because when we do this, the other person feels understood and valued. And active listening differs from critical listening because you're not trying to evaluate the message and you're not trying to find a solution. The goal is simply to let the person be heard. And many times, that's all was needed. We can come to our own conclusions, but we just need to be heard. And this is everybody, but sometimes we just need to be heard, a space to be heard, right? And then how else can we show that? With our eyes. Eye contact's really important, right? It's a really important way to demonstrate that we're listening to somebody. I don't know if you can relate, but have you ever been talking to somebody and their eyes are going left, right, center, or you're at lunch with somebody and they're like looking at everybody else around but you, right? Eye contact's a big thing. So when we think about eye contact, obviously don't overdo it. That's creepy, right? We can't stare at people, but we need to have proper eye contact. And some things you can think about is, focusing on one eye at a time and then switching, that's just a tip that you can use if you're like, I want them to know I'm listening, right? When you break your gaze, look to the side instead of down, especially on Zoom. It's easy to think somebody's like looking at their phone or they're just distracted, right? So just break it to the side. And the tip that's repeated over and over in this book is never, ever look at your phone while a colleague is speaking to you. And don't trust your willpower, just turn the phone off and put it away. That's the best way to do it, is if you're with someone that way, right? Last couple things, and then we can open up to some questions if anybody has some. So find commonalities, right? Once you find more points of commonality than differences, you're more likely to view others favorably. And in turn, they're also more likely to have a favorable impression of you. We all have what's called in-groups and out-groups, right? And so how do we create more in-groups? And what that is how do we create more in common with more people? So by gender, an in-group is, well, we're women and we're an in-group and men are an in-group, right? If I have kids, I got an in-group with someone else that has kids, right? If I find someone else who likes to cycle like I do, that's an in-group because we've got that in common, right? That's something in common. So what do we got to do is we got to get curious and we got to take some notes so that we remember. WebPDI is a phenomenal tool that we all have. You can use your phone for this, but listen and ask about them. I mean, many of you have probably taught this as sales reps. If at the end of your demo, you said more of, oh, wow, really cool, wow, because the customer just talked the whole time, you did a great job, right? So how do we make this not about us, but make it about them? And how do we learn about people and write those things down and then find some things we have an interest, right? It might be school, it might be sports, it might be our family life, it might be, but with the intent to find some commonality, because we do, like it's proven, we actually will view people more favorably, let them off the hook more if we have something in common. It's just human nature, okay? Be aware of the pictures. We talked about social media, but be aware of the pictures that you're sharing for diversity purposes, especially with your team. Are you showing a diverse group of people? And as you now have your office, those of you that, think about even your Zoom background, but those of you that will be working from a physical space, think about the diversity you're showing in your organization, right? The pictures you have in there and what are we showing there? When we do team meetings and we show pictures, I don't think we have to show pictures of women in bikinis ever at a vector team meeting. I don't know why it would ever even be necessary. Are you trying to show maybe highlights of a trip? Sure, show a bunch of people then, right? You've got men, women on a boat and that's super fun. Use that to recruit people. Like if you're showing fun events that are coming up or we've had, cool. But we got to think about what are we sharing? What are we showing? What pictures? Don't diminish people just to their appearances. There's so much more to people, right, than just that. Avoid using words like brotherhood. Hey, this is a big one. And I'm going to tell you personally, I just let it slide for a long time because I felt really confident in where I was at and people I surround myself and my position. But the more that I hear it from the podium and from the stage and from something, the more I'm like, oh my goodness. And it's not intentional. Intentional as in I don't think it's being used because people think that they're not including. They're actually using it to be proud of the family, right? But when we say brotherhood, anybody who's not a guy or sees themselves in that is discounted. So what could we say instead of the brotherhood, right? Team, the team, right? There's lots of things we can do, but we don't have to say that word. And for that matter, it can go the other way. We don't say the sisterhood, right? In a professional setting, there's a lot of ways to describe our leadership team that we have here and how I value all these people on the team. One of the biggest takeaways, I think, from a conversation I had with somebody was just have a no alcohol policy at your local events. Just no alcohol. It almost seems that when something goes awry, and somebody didn't mean to do something, or they did something wouldn't normally have done, usually it's because alcohol was involved. So I don't think maybe you don't think this, but I don't think from all my experience, I've never lost somebody on the team because we didn't drink. I've never lost someone because of that. Have I lost people because there was alcohol and mistakes were being made? Yep, have. So if you just have a no alcohol policy at a local, you think about your team nights, you think about district staff events, you just have no alcohol policy, I'm not saying, hey, could we never have a beverage again? No, that's not what I'm saying, right? As we advance in the company, yes. And do we always need to be thinking about how we present ourselves? Can we handle, we're always being interviewed. How do you handle alcohol when you're given the opportunity to have an adult beverage? Can you have one or two and that's social? Or do things get out of hand, right? So let's not, I mean, think about the age demographic of who we are going to spend most of our time with this summer developing. We don't even need to worry about it, right? Plus, you don't want to put that kind of responsibility on yourself, right? That's a liability issue. Like you don't want that. You don't need any of that, right? So it doesn't make sense. And I think the last thing I'll share here is I think it's a good idea, because you're the district manager or the branch manager, you get to decide the culture within your organization. I always tell people, I say, just tell people right from the get-go what's acceptable and what's not in terms of the relationships that we form, and what is tolerated. And I would tell people right at the beginning of, in terms of like rising star meetings or key staff, potential key staff, that, this isn't a place where you're going to find your girlfriend, boyfriend, or, this isn't that place, and we would kind of, use the term, we'd say, hey, no vector connecting. But what I'm really proud of, especially in the recent, months, is our company's really, really working hard to design and support programs and policies so that all of us feel really great about what's acceptable and what's not acceptable. And we should never have anybody in our company that feels that it's not a safe space to work. And so as we move forward, it's not about what was done in the past. It's not about, I know that, people say to me, well, so-and-so, they're married and they met. I'm like, I get it. It's not about what is. It's about how we move forward. And this isn't a vector thing, by the way, just so it's clear, right? This isn't just like, oh, Angie just bring this because it's vector. This is just not great for business. We want everybody to thrive here. We want everybody to feel safe. People change their minds, a lot of things, and then people, whether you like it or not, there's always a perception. So if so-and-so is dating somebody, especially if there's a position of power, there's going to be an assumption made. Oh, that's how you advance. So that's what's all tolerated here, or this is happening there because of that, right? We don't need any of that because it's not necessary and not needed, right? And so you could say, that's not what we do here. Now, can you control no, you can't. Nobody can, right? But you could definitely say that's what's accepted, not accepted, and you let people know that's not what we do here. Which is the benefit of having a life that involves vector and involves other things outside of vector, right? We have lots of ways to meet people. And as we move forward, we could think about all of the people that maybe are not, that just didn't get that far because they just didn't feel, safe. And we want to create a safe space for everybody. So that was a lot of stuff, but I feel like I just kind of, shared. So if there's questions or you want to kind of go a different way with this, I'm cool with that too.
We figured it might be like drinking from the fire hose of awesome. We knew it could be a thing. And so thank you for bringing all of that. Folks, if you're like me, I've got like 5 pages written in my journal here. So I didn't drop a lot of stuff in the chat because I want to make sure I always have it. This is some really good stuff. Even if it's stuff that I've known, there's some different tweaks here. One of the things I was thinking of, Angie, I saw a recent study that said if the phone is visible, not even if it's blown up or ringing, if it's visible, it affected conversations. The study said that the phone being within eyesight had an adverse effect on the conversation, which is crazy. In fact, even just with my wife, if I just keep this thing away, our date night's better. I'm just saying, it's pragmatic on so many levels if we can do that. If we're meeting with somebody in our office, once again, my laptop's closed. There's nothing. I don't want the distractions. I want to be able to actually lock in and be fully present, male or female. That just makes a ton of sense. That everything you said there about listening as well there. Friends, give you an opportunity to interact with some of the things in the chat. What resonated with you? What do you go, hey, I don't know, or maybe can you explain this a little bit more? This is a great opportunity to take advantage of Angie Macdougall and her time here. So you can drop those in the chat. You can raise a hand and we'll find a way to acknowledge that. Angie, as you've come up for air, anything else that has emerged for you that you're like, I totally forgot to? What else you got for us?
I think I wanted to share something that I didn't know, but is good for us all to know, is that statistically, that when applying for a job, and I'm just going to bring this up as an example so that you might be just more mindful of this. But statistically, it's been proven that if, say that there's 5 levels of criteria that somebody needs, that they post in the posting, and they say, hey, we're looking for somebody that has these 5 characteristics or criteria. If a man meets even just one of them, he will, in general, apply. A woman typically needs to meet 4 or all of them before she applies. And I'm sharing that with you because there might be women that you're, and this is not just from like, this was good for me to realize as developing more women, is that our belief in people, right, and showing them their potential and then helping them get there is more important than sometimes we think. And just because somebody doesn't raise their hand immediately when you talk about an assistant manager opportunity or the district manager opportunity, doesn't mean they wouldn't be good at it. In their mind, they think, I've got to tick all these boxes before I can even put my hat in the arena. So if you're mindful of that, you actually might say to somebody, hey, I want to let you know that, yeah, we're looking for this and this and this, but I also want to let you know that those can be, you can grow into those. And you might not, I don't know where you see yourself on that, but I want to tell you why I see you on that list. This is what I see in you and why I think you'd be great fit for this. Because they might be discounting themselves right off the bat. And it's not because they're not interested. So we might take that hands up as, oh, they're just not into that. No, they just don't think they should apply. And so I think there's nuances there that are different. Oh, and Shelby just posted, I noticed in there that, yes, there's if you're looking to take some of this, I will share lots of resources, but looking to take this further is Brene Brown has a new book called Atlas of the Heart, and she's got an HBO series. And one of the things she talks about is the difference between belonging and fitting in. And this is in alignment. This is in alignment with what we're talking about with inclusivity and diversity. Is when you're fitting in, you're not really authentically being you because you're having to adjust to the group. But when there's true belonging, you can show up as who you are, right? And be accepted for who you are and provided the same opportunity to grow with that group. And so when you think about because I didn't know that actually before when I started reading this, I was like, oh yeah, I belong. What about Lauren? I was like, no, actually, I just fit in. And I actually did this because I wanted an opportunity to get a seat at the table. So I changed a little bit of who I was so I could be accepted, to fit in, to get around the right people, because I didn't think I could be myself. So if we're even just thinking about that is, how can we create an environment where it is of true belonging and that people can show up as who they are. And that creates what we say is that more diversity, right? That helps us to really grow our teams, right? It's just an education on the difference between the two. And somebody asked me a little while ago, one of the things I wanted to make sure that our community created with the Women's Network is I really wanted to create a community that valued collaboration over competition. And I've really been wondering with myself, why is it that there's this thing in many companies that women just don't get, they don't get along as well sometimes. And I actually think it's a byproduct of a very scarce resource and a scarcity mindset that the only way to succeed is to get around men, right? Because they're the ones that hold the key to advancement. And so if she's there and I'm not, then we're being competitive, or we have to come across as so confident. And when we come across as so confident, then we're actually not relatable and we're not inviting. And so nobody goes up to you to talk to you, but you're actually really open and really easy to talk to. And so the more women that we have in these positions of leadership, the less there'll be this scarcity mindset. Because in Vector, this is the best place. I think about so many corporate cultures and I'm like, oh my goodness, this is a win-win. The pie is as big as we want to make it, right? This isn't like a win-lose. This is an abundant opportunity for so many people. And so we can create an environment that is collaboration over competition. Do we use competition? Yes, there's friendly competition, obviously, in our business, and that's exciting. But we can really use that, you know, to grow our teams. And so, how do we just check some of our thoughts, biases, and another great book to consider downloading and listening to or reading is called Think Again by Adam Grant. And really, what it does is it just makes you think again that maybe you have to rethink some things, and that's okay, because we have. I mean, I'm really thankful for the people that are around me that allow me to make some mistakes and let me know, hey, that's not really the right thing to say. This is what you should have said. I'm like, thank goodness, right? Because you don't know what you don't know. But if we're being curious and we're looking for those answers, we can ask and be okay with the fact that we don't have all the answers, right?
Angie, in some of our conversations, and I want again, thank you for just showing up so well prepared today and bringing so much content for us to just kind of chew on. I love the long format of Masterclass. This also came out of the pandemic, and I'm grateful that we could have a long discourse on this. Angie, you said something in the prep, something to the effect of normalizing changing your mind. Is that we're thinking, if we wanted to do that more, is that where Think Again would be a deep dive on that?
Yeah, for sure. Something that they talk about is something called the Dunning-Kruger Effect. And it demonstrates that the less a person actually knows about a subject, the more confident and assertive they tend to be about the subject. So put another way, certainty about the world is inversely related to wisdom. Now that might sound a little weird, but the perception of confidence in executives is vital, right? So knowing when to strike a confident tone in your organization, but also to learn to read irrational exuberance in others is also important. So it's really a tightrope we walk between humility and confidence. They're not opposing forces, right? The best leaders they've found through research exhibit both traits in one package. They're humble, but they also have confidence, right? So learning how to think and speak probabilistically about outcomes and scenarios, doubt and question our own conclusions, encourage others to use their experience to challenge your hypothesis. Thinking critically, leveraging your full team. And I think that at the end, when we summarize this, is we can all learn something from each and every person we encounter, male or female. The best way to adapt and thrive in a diverse and inclusive workplace is to treat everybody with respect, practice kindness, and show appreciation. And again, it's such a small thing, but again, the research is coming up more and more. Everybody wants to feel appreciated. Everybody wants to feel valued. And if we're being genuine about it and we're being considerate and polite and we're doing it routinely and consistently, we're gonna create a place of belonging. And I'm sure we've all heard the proverb that it takes a village to raise a child, and at work it takes a village to create inclusion. And that means that each and every one of us, right, has a responsibility and an ability to create a culture where everyone's treating people with respect, right? It's a culture that's, it's a shared responsibility for people to feel that they belong. Do we still have standards and the way we present ourselves and work with customers and how we show? Yeah, we have those things in Vector, but we can work within those, I believe. And it's just striking the balance. I know for me, the hardest part, as everybody will see, the further you go up into leadership, the more answers people think you have to have, and the more they look to you for an answer. And it gets a little hard because you don't have all the answers, but you want to have the answer. And you don't want to look, and this is me, I'm just speaking from personal experience. I don't want to look unconfident. I want to look confident. I am confident in why I'm here and what I do, but I don't have all the answers. And so sometimes it's okay to say, that is a great question. Let me work to find an answer. Or what do you think? What do you think? I value your opinion. So it's not about throwing everything out the window and being like, yeah, I'm not, I don't have any answers. You tell me how it should go. It's not about that. But it's being okay that maybe, I'm open to suggestion. And when we get a variety of people with diverse backgrounds on our team, wow, what a gift. What a gift to learn. what a gift to grow. You know, when you think about whether you're in the US or you're in Canada, multiculturalism, I mean, there's a lot of people we get to offer opportunity to. Lots of people. So we're gonna have to be curious. We're gonna have to learn. We're gonna have to be open-minded. We're gonna have to learn to create a space where there's more inclusivity, right? And we can only do that if we're willing to make a few mistakes along the way and own those mistakes. We don't have to create a reason for it. We just say, I'm sorry, that was my mistake. Make it better. And we move forward, right? That's what we need to do, is we need to own them and we move forward. And I think if we all realize that we all impact each other, because we do in our company, it's really powerful.
I don't think Earl Kelly would mind me sharing this, but I've witnessed him, and this is a smart guy. At Wharton Business School at UPenn is a smart dude, all right? And I've literally watched him say something to the effect of, he heard a word, and he goes, I don't understand what that word means. Walk me through that. And again, he was curious, but also there's a certain boldness, like where he's so comfortable, knowing he's smart, to actually ask. I tend to hang in because I've got sometimes imposter syndrome that I fight against, but I'll hang in, right? Whereas Earl Kelly, smartest guy in the room, just said, hey, I don't know what that word means. Walk me through that. And what a great opportunity to demonstrate that curiosity.
We just talked about imposter syndrome. That's come up so much. And I love the fact, Trent, you just said it, because most people think that only women deal with imposter syndrome. That is a human, you know, we can arrive. I mean, branch managers, I think, deal with it. Because all of a sudden you're in this place and you're like, do I deserve to be here? How did I get here? What's happening? And then all of a sudden they go, oh, it was luck. And then when we attribute why we're somewhere because of luck, that takes that, you know, we don't do that, right? And there's tips to how overcome the imposter syndrome. One other thing on the topic of inclusivity, for those of you that, you know, you're looking to take this to the next level, is I can share a document with everybody about microaggressions. I've learned a ton about this. And even the term microaggression, I was like, what the heck's a micro? What is that? I was like, what is that? Oh man, when you think about inviting and actively pursuing creating a more diverse environment on your team and people with different backgrounds, microaggressions are something that, you know, if you just start learning about of what to say and what not to say, you know, when someone says, where are you really from? Now, we might intentionally have the best intentions because we're genuinely curious.
So terrible. I know.
Right. Right.
Right.
Like I'm just gonna.
Or where's your family from, though? Right. It's wrong.
Right.
Right.
Right. Just don't say it. Right. Yeah. Like, you know, and I'll be totally vulnerable here, but like I used to think it was a good thing to say, I don't see color. I used to think that because I was like, oh, we're all equal. Okay, I'm not blind. I do so see color. And the fact that I'm not aware, right? Yes, there's differences. Yeah, and I need to be mindful of that. Yeah, right. But I was thankful to have someone say it, read too. Like that's, you know, but there's these little microaggressions that we say that we almost always don't ever mean for them to be negative. We're not meaning to be condescending. We're not meaning to do all that. But we say them, even pronouncing somebody's like, you know, their name. There's just things in how, if we were just educating ourselves on that. And you have a little list right by your desk that you're like, okay, let me just review that. Okay, all right, I'm running training. What are some of the things that would be inappropriate? What can I say instead?
For example, if I've got a name I'm not used to and I'm like, I'm going to botch this because it's perhaps a name I've never tried pronouncing before. Perhaps a good solution is, hey, I see this name here. How would you say your name? Jesus. Excellent. That's helpful, right? So that would be an example. Growing up in Vancouver, I didn't meet anybody named Jesus, right? I didn't know that was a thing. So instead of just assuming I know how to say this name that I don't see every day, to ask, hey, how do you pronounce your name? And I'll even, if I've got, back in the day, I'm dating myself, because back in the day, interviews, they're in person. I'd write down, though, a phonetic pronunciation of their name on the application. It's probably a little easier to do it now, I think, on Zoom. But
Well, here,
is this an
yeah,
example of microaggression if I'm
yes,
just botching
yes,
the name?
no, 100%. And here's just quick other ones that, you know, I'm going to say these things because these are happening, and you're going to probably look at me and go, really? But I'm just going to tell you, okay? You're transgender? Wow, you don't look it at all. Okay? What to do instead? Say nothing, okay? You know, oh, sorry, wrong person. And this is actually, you know, it's interesting, assumptions that we make. And I've heard this a lot of times on people have told me on, you know, Shayla has shared with me before that when people meet her and Brad, they assume Brad is the manager, the DVM, and she's just along for the ride, right? We don't assume anything, right? If we don't make that assumption right from the get-go, you know, another one is my boss is crazy, especially if your boss is female, okay? The sexist undertones of that are problematic, right? So when you call somebody, let alone a woman, crazy, it suggests that her concerns or actions are logical, right? So what to say instead is, you know, I don't understand her perspective on this. You know, the other one we brought up, where are you actually from? Another one is the way you overcome your disability is so inspiring. Like, I first read that and I was like, often we forget that people with disabilities, you know, have to deal with this on a regular basis. And so we don't say it. You don't say anything, right? You know, and that example I used earlier of, I think you're in the wrong room, like as your offices come back, you know, and people make just assumptions about where people think they belong and they don't, right? And so I akin that to when a rep tells you where they go to school or where they're studying. We don't make any assumptions and assume what somebody is studying based on their appearance. I think some people might, their facial reactions, oh, you're in that? Oh, you go to that school? Oh, like we just need to, oh, that's great. Tell me more. Oh, why'd you pick that school? Oh, why are you studying that? Oh, cool. Because that's a pretty common question for us to ask, right? What are you taking at school, right? We're making an assumption of what we think somebody's taking at school, right? I think is also important. Some people ask, is that your real hair? That ends up happening more for people that Black or Indigenous, people of color, they get that. And, you know, we say nothing. And then the last thing I'll share with you is interrupting. And I know that this is a weird microaggression to bring up, but the statistics are saying that men are nearly 3 times as likely to interrupt a woman than another man. And so, and the other thing that can happen is that it says the kicker is that when a man parrots the same idea as the woman he interrupted, he receives all the credit for it. And so the best thing to do is just to wait for someone always to finish their thought. And if you like their idea, to give them credit. And so it might not seem like an obvious microaggression, but they say that the research is saying that men will 3 times as likely to interrupt a woman than they will another man. So just a thing. And once it's brought to your attention, for me, once this was brought to my attention, I was like, you know, the saying, what you focus on expands. You know, you buy a new car, everybody's got the car. So now that it's actually entered your thought, you might be like, oh, here's their statement.
I need to apologize for every time I've like added a spotlight as microaggression today. I've totally interrupted you like 5 times today. Doesn't even matter if it's intentional. I'm working on it. I'll be better. I'm just having fun with the Edge. This is what's so hard about this. So it's what's important about us having this conversation. It's sometimes just laughing or owning it. I think you can see both Angie and I owning stuff. Just because Angie's talking about this doesn't mean she's mastered all of it. Me, just because I'm hosting doesn't mean I'm even good. I'm a work in progress, and I want to be better, and I want to be curious. Ezekiel has a question that he posted in chat that really deserves. And Ezekiel, I don't know if you're still here. If you are, I'm going to invite you to unmute yourself because I'd love to hear your voice in the recording here. Are you still with us? All right, we got you. Let me add you as a spotlight here. Hi, Ezekiel.
Cool. So Yeah, go ahead. Sorry. So my question was, of course it's in the chat, but it was pertaining to to what extent do you pursue diversity and stuff like that and inclusion? Because obviously it's a really great asset to have that that extra set of eyes or ears from a different perspective, right? So how far do you go to target people, whether it's in your team already or people in the interviews and stuff like that? How far do you go to get those people on your team?
You know, my initial response to this,
in your development.
Yeah, my initial
delay here. Sorry, Ezekiel.
Yeah, my initial response is not so much how far do I go to get them, it's how can I create an environment not to lose them. So that's, and I think we have more control over that. And what I mean by that is like the pictures that we show, the references that we use, the examples and the stories of people succeeding here. Are we being intentional about sharing multiple different types of people's stories? Because if we only share, you know, one type of person's story over and over and over. So, and I think this is where we get challenged, right? Because this is where I've gotten challenged, is that we're putting together a conference agenda. And I'm trying, you know, we're all trying to be mindful of creating a diverse variety of messages and speakers, okay? Nobody wants to just be given a message because of their gender, okay? I can tell you from personal experience. Don't just stick me on agenda because I'm a woman, okay? Like that just, if I'm not good at the topic, like don't give me the topic, okay? That's like worse, right? So what's the goal? The goal is to have a lot of people succeeding, so we have a lot of people to pick from. And because we have a lot of people to pick from, we're aware of it and we're actually conscious of it to go, do I have a variety of people on the agenda today? And when I'm sharing stories and training, am I thinking about all the different types of people I can share stories about? I mean, this isn't that far off from like, I mean, I'm just trying to, it's been a while since I ran training, but when I think about when we were on training, we would talk about, you know, lots of different types of people having success in their fast start, right? Or leads, right? Oh, they started with like 2 people. They started with 5 people. They started with 10 people. I would give all these different examples so somebody who I was speaking to could find themselves in that place. So if we're thinking about how do I intentionally recruit and target, as one maybe the word that might have been I used, but more diversity. Instead of that, how do we think of how do I create an environment where I don't lose people? How does everybody feel safe? Because of who they are. Like, right? We can't change. We're not needing to or wanting to change who we are. So how do I create an environment of a culture that when they come to training or in an interview and they come to training and they show up and they go, I'm not using terms that could offend somebody without even realizing it. And I mean, maybe, you know, on that topic, I mean, Sherry, do you have anything you might want to add to that?
I think what you said makes a lot of sense. I just think that we all have blind spots, and you said this earlier, Angie, we don't know what we don't know. And so instead of approaching it for the sake of diversity, the more people that we can have in our team that come from different backgrounds, different religions, different races, different genders, then they're opening up our eyes to things we hadn't thought of before. So you're going to be able to relate to a whole bigger group of customers and potential clients because you never, you know, talked about cutting certain food, and now you can expose yourself to a whole new demographic. Like we talked about earlier, you know, diversity is good for business. So by just realizing that it's not our fault that we have blind spots and it's just something that we all have, and to be okay with that. But the more that we can recruit people that aren't like us, and like Angie just said, make everyone feel safe and welcome and included, then it exposes us to things we never even thought of before. So it's going to make it more attractive for everyone.
Yeah.
Sherry, this is helpful. I think what you're saying there about the blind spots and just acknowledging that we have some blind spots and that we would like to improve. The alternative is that we look like Michael Scott from The Office, where it was so many. I mean, I think the writers basically went out and looked at a list of microaggressions and wrote them all into Michael Scott, right? or Dwight Schrute. The idea being that if we act like we're an expert on this, because I've had one rep of color in my office, like we've got to be careful with the assumptions in particular, and actually more embrace a curiosity. And I can't wait to be able to pronounce your name well. I would say that silent, like to the side, one-on-one. Hey, walk me through this one more time, as opposed to announcing it in front of the audience to try and make myself feel better in that moment. Alyssa, if you're still here, thank you again, Sherry. If you're still here, Alyssa, I'd love to invite your voice into the chat here. In fact, I just want to make sure that what you shared on chat makes it into the masterclass here and the recording, if you're open to it and if you're still here.
Yeah. She had to jump. Oh, great.
Yes.
I'm still here.
I'll find you and spotlight you. All right. Go ahead. The floor is yours.
Yeah. So I've always had a little bit of I've had a little trouble with the word inspiration, and what that means to certain people. And don't get me wrong, I've been out in public. I'm in a wheelchair. I have muscular dystrophy. I've been out in public and I get old women who will tap me on the shoulder and be like, "It's so great to see you out today." And it's like, do you think I never leave my house, right? But for some reason, because I have that difference attached to me, they think like, wow, she's amazing. And it's like, in reality, I'm just playing with the cards that I was dealt. And that's what everybody does, right? We all have a challenge. Maybe it's a physical challenge or a mental challenge or whatever it is, right? But we don't need to be pinpointed because we have that challenge. It should just, if anything, it should just inspire you to be the best version of yourself, just like I've done. So I'm not an inspiration, but I want people to aspire to be the best version of themselves, essentially.
Beautiful, Alyssa. Thank you for sharing. Glad you're here. Thanks for hanging into the end too. I know we're getting way past the hour. Come up on 2:26 at least Eastern. Angie, thoughts? If we could make the last word yours here today.
Well, one thought would be, since we're speaking about growing a community that can benefit everybody, is the more of the women in your organization that you can invite to the classes. Our next class, we're taking a break to kick off the summer, and then we'll have one in July. But I think it's just good for business when we can create colleagues, create connections and build relationships with all different types of people in our business and have more colleagues around the company, right? So that when we go to an SLC, which is so exciting to see, that's going to be in Phoenix, and when we go to these events, we've created more relationships and people we can call for advice and help, and we can create that connection. So the first thing would be to invite the women that are in management on a path of management to these calls, because it matters, and it helps them see other people if they may not see it right there. So you could use this group to leverage, the ability to have more diversity, because you might be saying, I don't have a lot right now, and now I'm going to be aware of it, and I'm going to really be more conscious. Use the group, leverage the group. I would say, think about the stories you share. Think about using a lot of different examples, right? Is how do I use more examples? And as you build your team, yes, we want to build people with with the skill set needed and performance-based and all those reasons. But be aware that as you build your staff, having diversity is going to help you grow a bigger team, right? You're going to do that. And so when you share pictures and, you find ways to even advertise for the position, and, you might think it's just not a big deal, but look at it and go, is this portraying a place where many people can feel they can be themselves and they can belong, that this is a place for them to thrive, because this is a place for them to thrive. And if somebody chooses to move on from our organization to pursue something else because of a passion in an industry they wanted, then fantastic. We did the job of being the place to provide the skill set to help them do that. I just feel super sad if somebody feels like they can't thrive here and have a family. They can't thrive here with being themselves. That's what I want to change. And maybe it's not change, but it's to create more stories of people that are here because they want to be here and they see a path to be able to be themselves and run a successful business, because this is a great place to be to do that. And we have the ability to create that. You have the ability to do that in the role that you'll have this summer, whether you're an assistant manager or a branch or district manager, and we all matter. So, yeah.
Angie, thank you so much again on behalf of everybody here. We were at a high point, I believe, about 41 attendees live today, and just appreciate you bringing the best of you, not just here, but for the last 20 months and even beyond that, specifically with the Women's Leadership Network. And I think you've enrolled some people here today to be part of the solution. I want to read out what Sherry said. History has shown that the privileged group can often do the most to influence change. Let's be the change we want to see. And I'm stealing that from Angie, stealing with pride. Thanks everybody for joining. I'm going to stick around for just a little bit. I recognize, of course, if you got to jump off, because we are 2:30.